streets. Now, let's get on to the online safety bill. And well, one aspect that we haven't really we've mentioned it in the past, but we haven't been focusing on terribly heavily, and that is this issue of mass surveillance that goes hand in hand with the online safety bill. So if you remember, the issue of legal but harmful was dropped, and that was all because it was about protecting children. So let's remind ourselves what the statement from last December was from the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. Protecting children and stamping out illegal activity online is a top priority for the government, and we will bring the online safety bill back to Parliament as soon as possible. It, of course, is back in Parliament. It's in the House of Lords at the moment and at committee stage, and it will be back in the House of Commons in due course. But the main focus here is on the online chat platforms, Facebook, WhatsApp, Telegram, but not necessarily just those. It could also apply to people running forums, people running their own private chat servers, and so on. Now, I just want to highlight this report from Index on Censorship. It came out in November last year, the title is Surveilled and Exposed, How the Online Safety Bill Creates Insecurity. I do recommend people read this. Let's just look at a little bit of the text from it. There's been significant commentary on the flaws of the online safety bill, they say, particularly the harmful impact on freedom of expression from the concept of the duty of care over adult internet users and the problematic legal but harmful category for online speech. Index and Censorship has identified another area of the bill far less examined that now deserves our attention. The provisions in the online safety bill that would enable state-backed surveillance of private communications contain some of the broadest and powerful surveillance powers ever proposed in any Western democracy. The bill, as currently drafted, gives Ofcom the powers to impose Section 104 notices on the operators of private messaging apps and other online services. And it's this other online services that implies, it's not clear just yet, but implies it may cover organisations down to even as small as the UK column. These notices give Ofcom the power to impose specific technologies, e.g. algorithmic content detection, that provide for the surveillance of the private correspondence of UK citizens. The powers allow the technology to be imposed with limited legal safeguards. It means the UK would be one of the first democracies to place a de facto ban on end-to-end encryption for private messaging apps. Now, we've mentioned the end-to-end encryption issue, but the issue of blanket surveillance in this way, we haven't really highlighted as such. So let's move on with this. The Index and Censorship asked for an opinion from King's Counsel, and the legal opinion states that Section 104 notices amount to state-mandated surveillance. Ofcom will have a wider remit on mass surveillance powers of UK citizens than the UK spy agencies, including GCHQ. They say that it's questionable legality, so we can have a discussion about that. But they also highlight the fact that there's a failure to protect journalists. Now, although the online safety bill, the whole issue of online safety was really pioneered by the UK over the last number of years, other countries and other state organisations have effectively caught up and so on. And the EU, in fact, has caught up on this as well. And strangely enough, they're imposing exactly the same type of policy. So have a look at the Patrick Breyer website he's talking about chat control, the EU's CSEM scanner proposal. And of course, this is all about protecting children and trying to automatically detect child sexual exploitation material online and so on. That is a very useful article. I do suggest everybody reads it. But I wanted to also highlight an article that came out today by Mulvad VPN, and they are really highlighting the fact that EU chat control law will ban open source operating systems. So the scope of this actually, aside from the online surveillance and the mass surveillance and bulk data collection that's going on, it has potential to have a massive impact on the entire internet. So let's have a look at what they're saying here. Article 6 of the EU's law requires that all software application stores assess whether each service provided by each software application enables human-to-human communication, verify whether each user is over or under the age of 17, and prevent users from under 17 from installing such communication software. And the point they make is this clearly covers the online software archives almost universally used by open source operating systems since the 1990s as their main method of application distribution and security updates. These archives are often created and maintained by small companies or volunteer organizations. They're hosted by hundreds of organizations such as universities and the internet service providers all around the world. One of the main ones, the volunteer-run Debian Package Archive, contains over 170,000 software packages. These software archive services are not constructed around a concept of an individual human user with an identity or an account. They are serving anonymous machines such as a laptop, a server, or an appliance. These machines then might or might not be used by individual human users to install applications entirely outside the control of the archive services. If and when this law goes into effect, it would make illegal the open source software services underpinning the majority of services and infrastructure on the internet, an untold number of appliances, and the computers used by software developers, amongst many other things. To comply with the law, all of it would have to be shut down globally, as the servers providing software and security updates can't tell the difference between a web server, a Japanese software developer, a refrigerator, and an EU teenager. So maybe I could ask Alex for some comment here. First of all, on the bulk data collection and surveillance aspect of this. Just a coincidence, perhaps, Alex, that the UK and the EU running along same lines here, using the child sexual exploitation excuse to justify powers which are way beyond what we already have under REPA.
Yes, and for foreign viewers, that's the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act. Every decade or so, the security services, the intelligence agencies, such as my old employer, GCHQ, have a new acronymic law justifying their activities, at least since about the Thatcher era, when gradually the British government started admitting that we had these services and that they wouldn't spy on the British, and the same in the other Five Eyes countries. American agencies wouldn't spy on US citizens, except if it was very strictly authorized by a warrant signed by a Secretary of State. But that is, of course, as we've seen with local councils spying on people's social media posts for things as routine as falsely claiming benefits or even making mistakes with their rubbish collection. That has already gone out both down to the local government agency level and across to all of these, what we call in Britain, quangos, quasi-autonomous national government or non-governmental organizations, arm's length agencies. And that's, as you highlighted in your segment there, Mike, the problem. The staff at MI5, MI6 and GCHQ, and I know people will be cynical to believe this, do not actually wish to spy on their own people. They have a strong aversion to it, and although it's nearly 15 years ago since I left now, I have no reason to doubt that it's still the case that people don't want to waste their time and do unlawful things spying on their own people. They can see the uselessness of that. But this is being obviated by bringing in a new class of people, a new mindset, and new justifications for it to keep everyone safe from feeling hurt or from being induced to do things that aren't good for them. And one slide we didn't put in today, actually, because it didn't quite make the cut, but I've just called up the text of it because it's a third European jurisdiction going the same way. The Swiss site Netzpolitik is reporting that there is a federal or confederate law at Swiss national level on protecting youth in the areas of film and video games. Article 8 of that, as currently drafted, is requiring the providers of on-demand services, starting with games, of course, because it's less controversial, they have to take supposedly appropriate measures to stop minors from accessing the services. And opponents of the law, report Netzpolitik, fear that the introduction of this age check would actually bring in a general digital identity requirement for the internet use in Switzerland, because when you first use such a service, you would have to give your consent, your data and your means of tracking you for everything else you did. So yes, this is something that's obviously cross-jurisdictional. The whole of geographical Europe, Switzerland, UK, and the EU seems to be going that way. Odd, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. The thing, my comment on this would be, we've looked into Ofcom in the past, and of course, if you delve into the people in Ofcom, you are straight back to the BBC. And for me, to give people connected with the BBC powers to be monitoring the ordinary person in UK while the BBC pushes out propaganda, I find outrageous.
Okay, let's. What's next?